Friends, greetings to all of you, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in for the next episode of From Ordinary to Extraordinary with our guest Charanjeet Singh. We are here to explore his incredible journey, and explore how it got shaped over the years. I will welcome Charanjeet to the program. Charanjeet, welcome.
Thank you, Phoebe. Thanks a lot for having me here.
Thank you. Now, our association started through LinkedIn only. It was the LinkedIn connection, which led to some other interactions on LinkedIn over the period of time. I just like to give you a quick snapshot of Charanjeet, his background. He is a finance professional with a huge years of experience behind him, mastering the art of fraud risk management and information security across multiple countries and jurisdiction, including GCC, Saudi Arabia, UAE, in Asia, India, in the African continent, Tanzania. His work has transformed the way organizations approach fraud prevention, leveraging technology to create innovative and effective solutions. So, right now, he is the director of CS Risk Consulting, where he provides expert guidance to organizations worldwide. Charanjeet, welcome.
Thank you, Phoebe. Just one update I'll say. I first met you during one of the Emirates Institute of Finance training programs. And then I reached out to you on LinkedIn, and it's been very productive for me, to say the least, to have a connection with you on LinkedIn. That really helped. Yeah.
Thank you very much for acknowledging that. And Charanjeet, so just to give our audience, what are your areas of interest right now through the
Yeah.
CS risk
Yeah.
consulting to start with?
Yeah. So I work in the area of fraud risk. Then there is something called cyber crime, and then there is a fusion of cyber and fraud, which we call nowadays as cyber fraud. Compliance, which is anti-money laundering and other financial crime, regulatory compliance, and of course information security. So these are some of the areas in which I specialize. I primarily focus on providing trainings in all these areas and also do consulting work in terms of developing framework, setting up a unit, creating policy and procedures. So those are some of the areas I've worked in over last 1.5 year. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And friends and those members who are joining, feel free to bring your questions, thoughts, comments, etc. to the session. Now, I just want to see if we, because this is all about from ordinary to extraordinary, from a perspective which we see, like we all are shaped by our environment, our interactions over the period of time. So my first question is, what is the story behind your first job?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking this. When we were chatting earlier, we touched upon this one. So my first job was with a company called 20th Century Finance Corporation, which later on became Centurion Bank, and then it became Centurion Bank of Punjab, and much later it got merged with HDFC Bank. So there is no Centurion Bank today. But back in '97 when I joined them, so I had a neighbor who was working with this company, and during my MBA, I reached out to him saying, "Bhaiya, help me with doing some internship." So he helped me in getting into this company as an intern while doing my MBA. I worked with them for a month without any stipend. Later on, they told me if you continue working, I told them I have MBA to complete. They told me you give us couple of hours and we'll even pay you. And they also told me you are only the second guy whom we are paying anything. We don't pay anything to any interns. So that was kind of a booster for me. I worked with them for a couple of months, and after I completed my MBA, I checked with them. I stayed in touch with them. So they had an opening in one of the cities outside my state in Nagpur. I was living in Indore, and they offered me that first break into financial services. So that's the story. I did my internship with them through a common friend who was working in that company, and then I continued the internship even after stipulated time. It helped me in getting my first job. Yeah,
So, for example, you have been through various beautiful organizations in the past, which include organizations like ICICI Bank, one of the leading organizations in India, Fullerton India Credit, Barclays, Tata Consultancy, Mashreq. Um, you have been with the First Abu Dhabi Bank, uh, head of group fraud, risk, and investigations. You have been also the UAE Banks Federation chairperson of Fraud Prevention Committee. Now, from that, for example, how did you navigate
yeah.
that career path?
Yeah. So to go back, I started my first job in operations. So my
Yeah.
job was helping the front end, which is sales and collection, and support them. So doing bank reconciliation. Those days we had to deposit post-dated checks into bank, collect the bounce checks, and then I saw certain things which were not logical. So I would go to the bank at the end of month to deposit checks, and then when I go back to the bank after 2 3 days in the next month, they would give me almost 80% of my checks back, and they would also scold me that why do you deposit so many checks which get returned. So I saw a
Mm.
trend over 2 3 months, and then I realized there is something really wrong here. I called my boss, regional head, who was in Indore. I was based in Nagpur. I asked him, why do we deposit these checks when they get bounced? He told me, ask your guy who tells you to deposit the checks. I asked him, he told me, no, customers tell me to deposit. I don't know why they bounce it. So I did a discreet check on the side. I called up some of the customers that why your check is getting bounced. You told us to deposit. They told me we never told you to deposit. So that was my first, thing into going beyond what you are supposed to be doing, and you pick up something which is not good for the organization. So that I
Mm.
think helped the company in identifying a potential fraud which was brewing, because people had targets and they would deposit checks at the month end to show their targets have been met for collections, and next month the checks get bounced. So month on month they'll play this game to show monthly basis they are achieving their targets. But it is like operation is successful, but patient is dead. Company is not getting any money, but everybody is achieving their targets. What good is such a target achievement? So lesson out of this for me was don't work within the boundaries which your job role defines. So I started looking into why this is happening. I started asking questions. I did some additional activities, and of course, by keeping the management in loop, which helped me. So when this company wanted to start a two-wheeler financing business, they asked me if I would be interested in managing this business, setting up this business. So that's how I moved. I transitioned from operations to business, to sales.
Mm.
And even before that, while doing backend, I told my boss, I get so much time. What else can I do? He told me, okay, you do look at cases which are delinquent, see if you can recover money. So I met some of the clients during those visits. We did some restructuring. So I, branched out into related areas to add value to the organization, which helped me also personally.
Mm. 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 So that's interesting to see. So, for example, now I just like to look back. Now, if you look back, what are some of these inspirations which made you to do that questioning process, asking questions, being curious why this is happening? Is there any backstory which you like to share?
So I was not very good in studies, but I had a loud voice, and I had a teacher in grade seven, a Sanskrit teacher, Mrs. Mehta. She used to encourage me a lot. So she would get me to speak, so that entire class can hear, because my voice was loud. And I kind of became her favorite student. But I was not so good in other subjects. Even Sanskrit, I was not so good. But because she started focusing on me, I put in more efforts on Sanskrit. So one thing which I saw is when people, highlight your potential to yourself, that gives you motivation to go that extra mile. in your words, like move from ordinary to extraordinary. So sometimes a small push can help somebody, can propel somebody from moving from ordinary to extraordinary. So I won't
Mm.
call myself very extraordinary, but whatever I have done, I am doing. I think that Sanskrit teacher played a big role in that.
That's a nice story you are acknowledging. And again, so for example, so what way that small kind words, that attention which that teacher has given, what are the ways it is still shaping your thought process?
So we try to give our best out, right? This is what I try to do. So if I take up some assignment, I give my best to it sometimes. And I am sharing some darker side of corporate sector. Many a times I get these companies who have got the contract from the main bank or main company, and they tell me, we want to do this session, this is the price and this is the timeline. So if it is acceptable to me, I tell them I can do it, but not in this time frame, not in this price. But if they push me, then I simply say I cannot do it. Find out somebody who can do it, because I am not going to do anything just for ticking the box. I've seen bad
Mm.
effects of that. So I would not want to put my name to somebody, something which is substandard. I cannot reduce my standard because I am being paid less. Whatever I am being paid, I have to give my best. So if I take the assignment even at a lower price, which I did couple of times when I started, because I just wanted to do something. So
Yeah.
I gave my best, but after a point, I told them I cannot continue at this price. Some of them came back, increasing the price. Some of them did not come back, but I did not
Mm.
lower my standard. So that
Yeah.
is what is shaping me. That you give out your best. It should not be linked to what you are being paid or what is your rating or whatever. If I get best rating, I have done good job. But if I get bad rating for the, say, previous year, I cannot lower standard of my work. Either I move away from that place, or I continue giving my best. So
Mm.
that's what shapes my work.
Mm. Thank you very much for sharing that. Now, I'm just curious. You started your career in India. How did it land in different
Yeah,
geographies?
yeah,
What was the inspiration for you? For
yeah,
example, I have seen you have been in Saudi Arabia, you have been in UAE, you have been in Tanzania. So, what is the story behind each of
yeah,
those moves?
yeah.
And
So
audience, in case you have a question for Charanjeet, please add it in the LinkedIn comment. If you like, I'm happy to ask it for all of you here on the platform. So feel free to do that. And thanks for joining. So Charanjit, what are the stories when you see the shifts to different
yeah.
countries?
Yeah. So one is, I never said no to a opportunity because of geographic location or because of the job title. So if I see something good, some good opportunity, I grabbed it. So I moved out of my home city to Nagpur. Before that, I had never worked outside my home city. I was raised here in Indore. I did my studies here in Indore. My family is here, and my parents, when I moved out to Nagpur, they were not very happy. The eldest son, we are two brothers, eldest son is moving out. My father runs a restaurant business, so he was saying, the salary which you would get in 1 month, we earn in one day. Why you have to go to Nagpur? But I told him, no, I want to go. I want to do something on my own. I don't want to continue in the family business. So Nagpur. Even before I moved out of India, with ICICI Bank, primarily I have worked in 5, 6 cities in India. So I worked in Bhopal, then Jaipur, then Delhi, then Mumbai, before I finally moved out of India. So my Tanzania was the first overseas assignment, which happened with Barclays back, I think, in 2007 or 8. I was working in fraud team there in India office, and Barclays is the group based out of UK. They came up with some assignments that we have these assignments globally, and they were seeking nominations from staff. So I raised
Okay.
my hand and I volunteered that I want to work overseas. So my boss told me, they have some opportunities in fraud in Africa. Would you be willing to go there? I told him, yes, why not? So I was interviewed. They gave me three countries options: Ghana, Tanzania, and there was one more country. I did my research and I found that Tanzania seems to be the safest among the three. So I chose Tanzania. And one side story, Phoebe, I would like to share with our viewers is, so when I got Tanzania, people who knew me in India, they asked me, "Are you getting a punishment posting?" Because for people, Africa was like, it's not so good, it's not safe, it's high risk environment. Why you are going there? Are they sending you as a punishment? You did something wrong in India, and that's why they are transferring you to Tanzania. But I heard all that. I told them, no, I want to work there. I went there. First couple of days were not so good, but then we settled down. I was there for almost a year. That work really helped me in moving out of India again, in the form of UAE, where I spent good 13 years, and then Saudi Arabia, where I'm doing consulting currently. So yeah,
Mm.
not saying no to a opportunity because of constraint, and I would credit my family who would always travel with me. So my kids, they had to change school so many times. Later on, I put my son in a boarding school so that if I move locations, he doesn't have to move. I did the
Yes.
same with our daughter. So you have to sacrifice on the family and sometimes when you are mobile.
Yeah, that's interesting. So now, how did you identify fraud is an area where I just want to specialize.
Yeah.
What is the story behind that?
Yeah, so I was with ICICI in sales. I was area sales manager for their two-wheeler loans division. So I worked in two states with them, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. And then I was doing good in sales. But then what next? Because what I realized of 6 years working in sales is, it's a cycle. So you go and meet dealers, you check what is the problem your associates are facing, your DSS are facing, how can you improve efficiency, effectiveness in the file processing. Because sales, the downside is every month end you get bulk of your business and your capabilities are limited. So how do you ensure whatever you are sourcing gets processed, get booked in the same month? Because incentive for dealers, for your DSS, everything is linked to the booking. So I had kind of mastered that cycle, that these are the things you do at a place where business is not doing well. Where it is doing well, how do you increase the business? And I repeated that cycle, but then it was kind of, I could do it in my sleep. So in ICICI, I was talking to my boss, and he told me, "What do you want to do?" I told him, "I don't want to work anymore in this area. I want to do something different." He told me, which area you want to work in. I told him collections. So he, to his credit, he called up his counterpart in collection who was handling fraud and collections, and he told him that, this guy Charanjeet. He said, yeah, yeah, I know, because I used to help in collections as well. And he told him that he wants to work in your team. They told him that, okay, we'll come back. Then they came back saying, not collections, but we have opening in fraud. Would you be willing to come there? I told them
Mm.
yes, because I had seen fraud closely and I saw value add they were doing, catching people who were doing bad things with the bank and all.
Mm.
So they told me, we have an opening in Pune. You join Pune. Okay, I told my family that we are moving to Pune. We sent my car also there with a relative. After a month, again they came back saying, no, no, Pune, there is a problem. Would you go to Delhi? I told them, okay, I'll go to Delhi. So then eventually I joined Delhi in fraud, then Mumbai,
Mm.
then outside India. So that's the journey behind fraud. And same thing, Phoebe helped me in fraud, asking questions, that why this is happening, why this is happening. So that really helped. I was a newbie in fraud. I didn't know anything about fraud, but I learned it on the job. And I had
Mm.
some very good team members who coached me, who trained me. So I learned from my team members.
So I'm just curious to know here. So that transition is a learning curve for you from but you are a subject expert in the frontline business. You're a subject expert in collection. You are moving into fraud. Now, was there any mentor at that stage which you think, and as you mentioned, there are co-workers who might have helped you, and I have seen you have done new and interesting certifications and courses across the years. So, what was some of the inspirations and stories which led you to further rediscover yourself in that new role along with the mentors?
Yeah, yeah. So without mentor in corporate career as well as in personal life, you cannot survive. So I had some very good mentors. My boss, he was a pro in fraud. My super boss, he also did lot of handholding for me. Initially, if I look back into hindsight, they had this that their boss has dropped me into their lap. A person who does not know anything about fraud, he has done sales himself. I'm just thinking aloud because they did some fraud checks on me as well when I was in sales. Thankfully, I passed out. So there was nothing. They did some mystery shopping activities on me while I was in sales. So they initially had this reservation that this guy got referred by a big boss, and that's how he is in our area. He does not know anything about fraud. But then later on, they really helped me, and that shaped me. I am still in touch with one of them. That person also worked out of India in Singapore. He is again back in India. His name is GD Bala Subramaniam. Then another person was Selam Ravindran. These two were stalwarts in fraud, and that really helped me. And both of them had different approaches. So you talk to one person, their approach is different. You talk to another person, their approach is totally different. So I could get both the perspectives, which really helped me.
So I'm seeing the challenge which you faced when you are coming from, you are an outsider from a fraud risk perspective, but you are now trying to make an impact. Now, do you remember or recollect any challenge that might have pushed you to transcend
Yeah.
from the ordinary collection sales perspective to fraud? Anything which you can share with
Yeah,
our audience?
yeah. So when I was in two wheeler, our country head, he was my super boss. But when I became regional head for fraud risk, I was looking at all the products, and I knew in and out of two wheeler finance. So I would pick up lot of stuff in two wheeler finance, which my ex national head would not like, and he was sitting in the same city, Delhi. So we had frequent, clashes that why you are doing this. He would say in forum that this guy only knows two wheeler. He does not know any other product. That's why he is after us. But then we caught some big frauds in other products as well. So that convinced me that if somebody is trying to bring me down or bad mouthing me, I should work harder to prove them wrong. So I did lot of field visits. I was a regional head, so I there was no need for me to go out in the field. But I made it a point that I would visit sales points as well, car dealers, two wheeler dealers, BSS, to see what is happening there, how they are working, which gave me a lot of insights. So I would say when you are new into area, you definitely need to roll up your sleeves to learn the trade, because if I had not learned the trade, my team would not respect me, my peers would not respect me. So I put in that extra effort to learn about their businesses. Before that, I only knew about one or two businesses. But in fraud, you deal with every business, including, say, home loan, liability products. I had not worked in those areas earlier. So I learned about them, how they move, what are their processes, what are the points where control compromises can happen.
Now, so you touched upon that uh, learning certifications, importance of that. So, for example, I know you completed the master's program in business. Oh, how did it land on you when you realized that you need to keep on updating that
Yeah,
learning on a continuous basis? Because that is something which we all experience once we enter into the a different field. So,
yeah,
how you identified these are my specific learning skills?
yeah.
How did you? What research did you do? How did you identify that?
Yeah, yeah. So when we are into academics, that's a different environment. Now, one mistake I made while doing my MBA was I had not worked full time anywhere before doing my MBA. I realized it much later after jumping into the corporate world that if you have some experience and then you do MBA and all, you get much more value out of it rather than just doing your graduation and directly jumping onto say post graduation like MBA. So that was one learning I had, that because the concept like organization behavior, HR, lot of other stuff, you are not able to relate to them if you have not worked in
Mm.
a corporate sector. So when you come into corporate sector, then you realize, okay, we learned about this, but things are different here. And then I also realized, specifically after joining fraud, that it's a ever growing area. There are techniques as well. It is not that you can learn everything on the job. There are technical areas, there are professionals who teach, and I'm sure it applies to every function, not just fraud. It could be credit, collection, business, operations. So one needs to stay abreast about what is happening in the sector. What are these tools and techniques? Because it is not all just art. There is a lot of science behind things, and you cannot know about science unless you study for it. So that's
Mm.
what prompted me. And you have to differentiate yourself. Just to give an example, in a job market, there are 10 freshers who are going and
Mm.
applying for a job. Now, who will get the job? The one who can display he has more skill or some experience, maybe somebody who has done internship, somebody who has done beyond what was expected. So those guys will stand out. Same applies
Mm.
in corporate world when you look at ratings. So we have all gone through that journey, bell curve and all. So those who
Yeah.
get one or two, they would have done something exceptional.
Mm.
So
Mm.
everybody has same title, same job role, but who's getting higher rating? Those who are able to demonstrate they have done something beyond what was expected. So that
Mm.
kept me on my toes, and I also had some good team members who kept me on my toes to keep on giving your best. So
Mm.
yeah, that helped me. So one of my
So.
bosses, sorry, I am diverting. Just wanted to share another anecdote. So one of my bosses, he once told me, "Charan, you are like that shark in my fish tank who keeps me running." And then I read about it somewhere. So there is this story that Japanese, they would import ship from overseas, and the ship by fish, by the time it reaches the end customer, they would not enjoy the taste, because
Mm.
ships in a fish tank or whatever storage tank, they are not very active. So then they started keeping a small shark, baby shark, in the fish storage tank, and that baby shark would ensure these other fish keep on running around. So
Mm.
their taste would be different than the fish who are just there in a stagnant water. So we all,
Mm.
I think, at times need a baby shark in our life who keeps us running, who keeps us on
Mm.
our toes.
Yeah. So who keeps us being vibrant so that we reinvent ourselves in the process.
Yeah, yeah. It could be in the form of a bad rating. It could be in the form of a no salary raise. It could be lower bonus, whatever it is. For some people, unfortunately, it could be a job loss. So I
Mm.
would say everybody should look at those as an opportunity to do something bigger, do something better. Bad things
Yeah.
can happen to any of us, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean,
That's
yeah,
yeah. It's that. Thank you for bringing that. That's an interesting perspective. Sometimes there are people who are not finding an opportunity. One way they just completed their program, graduation. Then there are people who are feeling stuck in their current workplace. They are feeling, and there are people who may be laid off, as you mentioned. Um, so to help them, what are some ways in which they can reinvent themselves in their career or in their business
yeah.
or in their uh, phase of life?
Yeah, so I would say is staying relevant is very important. You are going through something, either it's a job loss, some other reason which is pulling you down. Don't give in to that. That's what
Mm.
I would say. So I don't have a first-hand experience, unfortunately or fortunately, but what I would say is stay relevant. How do you stay relevant? So LinkedIn is a very good medium wherein people can express their views, add value. So when I left my job, I traveled around couple of months, and after that, I was not having any work because I have just set up the company. I got one assignment. That's it. So I started creating some case studies on fraud based on my experience. I published them on LinkedIn for free. People saw that I got some inputs. Maybe some of that helped me in getting new business assignments. So stay relevant. Don't give up that because you don't have a job or because you got a poor rating. You are bad or you cannot add value. Identify areas where we can add value and keep on doing that. So this is what I would say. And Phoebe, you
Hmm.
yourself would know a lot. I have seen you so active on LinkedIn. This program itself is your brainchild. So I would also like to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think? What can people do?
Yeah, thank you, Charanjeet, for that question. So, in my perspective, you know, one aspect I will always say is manage your budget and finances. So that is one. So that see where you are. For example, this is something which one of my mentor told me: spend at least 10% of your income every year if you have on learning new things.
Mhm.
And another aspect, this is something which I picked from a conference. Today we all have a smartphone. We all are in LinkedIn. We can be our own media content producer. So this was something which triggered me. It was a few years back which I heard that in a conference that one CHRO said that we are all content producers. We
Hmm.
have a studio in our hand, which is our mobile devices.
Yeah.
What are we doing with that? So and that is one, so to reinvent. And another aspect which again from my perspective which I'm feeling is like connect with, we are connected with people. How are we engaging with them? So
Hmm.
for example, Charanjit, our interactions, for example, it was, I think during the COVID we had that virtual session where you joined, as well as then
Correct.
that led to conversation, that led to connections, that led to this conversation today. So I think, as you rightly pointed out, upskilling is something which people have to see. And again, the new ways of AI. How can we leverage AI? And as you mentioned, some of these tools are freely available. How are we
Yeah.
utilizing that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, I was just looking for a case study on perplexity.ai. What are some of the leadership challenges which organizations have?
Hmm.
So it throws some of the issues which we can then explore further. We can write an
Yeah.
article, as you said, a
Yeah.
case which can. So I'm just curious to know, like, what is one case which led to the project for you?
Sorry. Come again, Phoebe. I didn't get this one.
Yeah, you wrote about, you said that you shared some LinkedIn stories or
Yeah.
case studies created.
Yeah.
If you remember and if you are willing to share, not the organization, how it led to a project.
Okay, okay. So there is this company in India. It's a manufacturing industry. This person connected with me on LinkedIn after I started posting, and then he reached out to me about two assignments. Uh, we discussed both the assignments. I gave my quote. We had a discussion, and then we agreed to do one of those assignments. So it was straight out of LinkedIn. Then recently, somebody approached me for some training work in Saudi Arabia. Again, it came from LinkedIn. So I don't know what kind of keywords are working, but I ensure that I share my thoughts, I share news related to fraud, my area of specialization, and that leads to getting business. So if I look back, I would say 80% of my business is coming because of me being active on LinkedIn, being engaging on LinkedIn. And another small thing, Phoebe, this recent conversation which we have had burst of conversation between both of us. So I got almost 200 birthday wishes recently when I had my birthday. Yours was one of those few which looked like personalized message. So I responded to each of those birthday wishes one by one, though it was time consuming. I could have easily gone and said thank you to all who wished me, but I thought if people are taking pains to message me, I should also acknowledge and respond back. So I adopted the same tone how people responded to me. If somebody said happy birthday, I would the LinkedIn, it prompts you. You can just say thank you. It's easier. But if somebody is sending me a personalized message, I also wrote a personalized message, and I think that's what triggered this conversation today. That you wrote me a personalized message, I responded back to you, I checked about you, I made some comment about your post, and then we did couple of messages, and it led to this. So I've done similar things with some other people, and that has
Mm.
also one of the other ones has also leading to assignment. So point is,
Mm.
every interaction is an opportunity. um, LinkedIn prompts you to wish somebody who's celebrating something or maybe a job change, whatever. You have a easy way out. Just say congratulations or like it, but that will not lead to any conversation. But if you put in effort, it can lead to substantial, work for both of you.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Like the way in which we how we are doing that extra in that interactions, that
Correct.
makes that difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are all ordinary, but we can do that extra bit, which makes
Little bit
us.
of it can make lot of difference.
Yes, yes, and as you said, that curiosity, asking more. Like for example, there is no harm in asking. So this is something which one of my mentor told me that you have to knock. If you knock, only other person know that you exist.
So
If you
there's
don't
this,
knock,
yeah, there is this saying, even mother, though my wife doesn't agree to this, but I've used this saying earlier, that even mother feeds milk to the child who's crying. So
yeah,
if there are two kids, one is crying, one is not, who do you think mother will feed first? The one who's crying.
yeah, yeah.
And we
So
have to knock nicely. So I've seen people sending out messages, help me with a job. So message is like as if I owe them something. Or sometimes they don't even write the name, or they write the wrong name. I don't know. They are doing multiple messages, copy pasting. You make it personalized, there's a higher chance of getting a response. You send
mm,
random messages, nobody has time to work for you, right? People are
mm,
working for themselves. If you want somebody to work for you, you have to customize it, you have to personalize it.
mm. Now, before we close, I think time is flying like anything in this conversation. How you, uh, what was the transition to Fab in heading that role in the fraud, which is one of the largest bank in the region? What is the story behind that?
Yeah, yeah. So I got call from a headhunter. I was working with Mashreq. I had moved from fraud into audit. I was not happy with my rating, so I told my super boss I don't want to work anymore in the fraud department in Mashreq. They moved into me into audit. They asked me which area you want to work in. I told them audit. It's under the same group, and I wanted to learn more about audit. So while working there, I got a call from my headhunter again through LinkedIn, and then I had couple of rounds in Fab. So one was with the CISO, then CISO's boss, then CRO, then HR. So I had four interviews with different people, and then also with head of audit and his deputy. So I never had so many interviews in any organization except in Fab. Normally it gets finalized in one or two interviews most, but Fab I had almost 5 or 6 interviews over 2 months. And yeah, they made me offer, and their thing was we don't have many frauds, but we want to build up this department. I knew about Fab that it's a larger bank than where I was working in Mashreq. And if Mashreq we had 1x fraud, Fab in my logical mind should not have less than 3x fraud. But these were guys, the number they were saying it was 0.1% of the frauds we were having in Mashreq. I told them you might be right, but maybe there are frauds you don't know about. And that proved to be right. After I joined, they gave me two team members, which was lesser than the number of people we had in Maastricht, which was a much smaller bank. But I started with this. I told them, let me prove my worth, and then we'll get more team. So that is
Yeah.
another lesson. Before you ask for something, you add value, you give something, and then they understand what is the value you are going to add. So over the
Mm.
years, in the first year itself, our fraud number, from what they told me in interview, 0.1 times, it becomes almost 2.5x of what I was seeing in Mashreq. So I told them, I am not committing these frauds. It's just that we are looking for fraud now. Earlier, fraud would go under cover of default, under cover of operational error, under cover of system problem. But when we started looking into fraud, fraud was always there, and fraud is
Mhm.
always there. Nobody can say we don't have fraud. If
Yeah, yeah,
somebody is saying we don't have fraud, that means you are not looking for fraud.
yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
that's how simple it is. Yeah. So that helped me. And when I left after 8 years, we had a team of 30 plus staff, starting from two. We were managing fraud operations for entire group, including subsidiaries and international. And we had set up a center in India, Bangalore, to support the fraud team in UAE. We implemented couple of systems. Our budget, I don't want to quote numbers, but it
Yeah.
went from almost zero to I don't know, 10,000 times. So that's the story at Fab, and I'm proud of what we were able to do there. Again, it comes with sponsorship of seniors. You don't get a
Yes.
sponsor, there is very limited one can do in the leadership role.
Thank you, Charanjeet, for being with me and sharing all those. So, before closing, so someone is keen to move into fraud in a financial services, or in there are in other assurance spaces also. Fraud
Yeah.
is getting. So, what are some of the areas the person should focus on? What are some of the specialization the stream offers
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
someone?
Yeah. So there
If
are.
you can just throw some light.
Sure. So there are a couple of things I always tell people who want to move career from, say, one function to another, not just from sales or collection to fraud, but any other function, is try to look for opportunity within the same company. It's easier because in market people don't know anything about you, but in your company people know you. And sometimes people take that bet that, okay, this guy is doing good in one area, he or she wants to move into another area, let us support him. Every company wants to retain people, wants to develop people. So that is your best bet. If you are able to move within the company, that's easier than going out in market and saying, hey, I have worked in audit or I have worked in sales, now I want to work in, say, operations or fraud. It is possible, but it is more difficult than moving within the organization. Second, in terms of resources, internet and chat GPT and LinkedIn, it's full of resources to gain knowledge. One could also look at certifications like from ACFE, from ACAMS, from ACI, Association of Corporate Investigators. But I would say, before jumping onto certifications bandwagon, try to do something which is low cost or which is free. Coursera offers some very low value courses. Even LinkedIn offers courses. So look at those free material first, get some insights. Maybe once you start reading that, you realize that you wanted to go into this area, but it is not to your liking once you start studying about that area. So it will help you in making an informed decision rather than just joining for a certification, paying a hefty fee, and then 6 months into it, 3 months into it, realizing it's not for you. So do
Mhm.
some
Mhm.
low cost, venturing testing, sample testing. And we used to offer in my previous organization, we used to offer these project assignments to staff in the company because everybody wanted to come into fraud. So we would advertise in consultation with HR, these are the projects we want to run, and people can do their day job and also help us in some assignments. We would get
Mm.
benefit of their skill set. Somebody is good in data analytics, somebody is good in certain area, we would get their advantage, their support, and that gets one exposure into the fraud area, and it also helps us to assess somebody without committing for a longer term. So if somebody is working with me on an assignment, 1 month, 2 month, I can assess him or her, and they can also assess whether they like the department or not. Lot of companies are doing that. So I saw this in Mashreq, I saw this in Fab.
Okay, that's interesting. So volunteering and supporting and trying to taste the waters, or test
Raise
the
your
waters.
hand and ask, as you mentioned, knock. Say, I am interested in this area. Is there something I can contribute to? So they'll
Yeah,
assess. One thing is, one has to avoid any kind of conflict of interest. So I cannot
yeah,
work on something which is happening in my current department.
yeah. That's interesting. So final question: looking back on your journey, what are you most proud of, and what excites you about the future?
So what I am proud of is, Phoebe, when I look back, I see a lot of my team members. They are at senior positions, at leadership positions. So I have one, very close friend. He was my team member. It's Emirati national, and he is doing so well in the same organization which I left. So he came to us in fraud from central bank with no prior experience of fraud. That guy became my deputy within 1.5 year, and he was my go-to guy for anything. So, in fact, I nominated him when I was moving out to be my replacement. But he had moved on to another department within the bank, and he is doing so well. So, I am proud of that when I look at people who work with me and they have grown in their careers. So, that makes me proud. Another thing which makes me proud is the kind of processes, procedures, systems which I have helped in implementing, setting up. So I'm proud of all that. What excites me is now I can fight fraud at a much larger scale than being restricted to one organization. So that I was also able to partially achieve in my role as fraud prevention committee chairperson with UBF. We were able to influence decision making in the country, working with central bank, working with Al Ittihad Credit Bureau, working with TRA. So a lot of that stuff, excites me that now I can do much more. So something in Saudi, something in UAE, something in India.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation, Charanjeet, and wishing you fantastic times ahead as a founder of CS Risk Consulting. Thank you again.
Thanks
So,
a lot,
thank you,
Phoebe.
audience. I know we haven't got much time to have questions, but in case of any questions, feel free to reach out. As Charanjeet mentioned, knock the door, ask. With that,
Thank
we
you,
are
Phoebe.
closing.